Welcome to the Celebrating Women podcast, co-hosted by Mandee Montana and Ashley Fisher, a podcast that celebrates women, their issues, their thoughts, their lives, conversations that celebrate their gifts, their talents, their courage. It's the Celebrating Women podcast. Presented by Hand & Stone Massage and Facial Spa in Tyler, Texas.
Hey, it's Mandee Montana, and everyone knows the importance of staying hydrated, right? I'm always telling you to drink your water. But did you know your skin needs that hydration too? Oh, yes. Chelsea Everett, the lead esthetician at Hand & Stone Massage and Facial Spa in Tyler, is here to talk a little bit about that today.
So you do want to moisturize, of course, morning and night. I always tell my clients to apply your leave-on products by consistency. So thinnest to thickest, the only difference in that is your sunscreen is always going to be last. So you'll start with your toners, your corrective serums, then your hydrating serums, and then you'll go in with your moisturizer after that. I always recommend putting moisturizer on while your skin is a little damp, so that we can really make sure that we're pushing that water into the skin. The moisturizer will also absorb that water and push that back into the skin too.
Chelsea, thank you so much. See how the skincare professionals can help you look and feel your best at Hand & Stone in Tyler today. Stop by and make your appointment in the Cumberland Shopping Center or online at handandstonetyler.com.
Welcome back to the Celebrating Women podcast. I'm Ashley Fisher.
I'm Mandee Montana.
And it's just us in the studio today, and we are going to try and tackle a pretty big topic today.
Yeah, it sometimes could be the elephant in the room. It's that big.
It is, and it's so big, in fact, that it very well could wind up being a more than one episode thing. We're going to talk about narcissism.
Yeah.
Let's just go ahead and just throw it on out there.
Let's put it out there. Narcissism. I feel like it's something that people deal with on a semi-regular basis. I think everyone's encountered a narcissist at some point in their life, whether it's fleeting or a situation that they've been in for a few years. And it can be very unsettling, to say the least.
Yeah, very discombobulating.
Yeah. And I think sometimes when you're in it, it's hard to know that that's what's going on, because one of the things about narcissists is they can be incredibly charming and draw you in almost like a moth to a flame situation. And then suddenly you're questioning everything about yourself.
Everything about you, everything about your perception of reality, just everything. It's such an interesting topic because I think it's something that's been around since the dawn of time. And I feel like it's only really come to the surface as like a topic of conversation in the last few years, you know, with the surge of like mental health and awareness and all of that. It's been on the rise. And it's one of those things that it's one of those words that gets thrown out a lot too, and maybe not always fairly. Like, oh, they're such a narcissist.
Oh, I've been called one.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean,
by a narcissist.
Well, isn't that shocking?
I'm kidding. I'm sort of kidding. There's always a layer to that. Just kidding, right? This person's not been diagnosed as a narcissist, but has some narcissistic tendencies. And I guess they saw that within me because maybe they had some on their own.
And here's the deal.
Yeah.
Narcissism, it comes on a spectrum. It's not necessarily just like the stamp of somebody's character. I'm going to read this from just good old WebMD. It's a trait, but it can also be part of a larger personality disorder. Not every narcissist has narcissistic personality disorder, or NPD, because narcissism is a spectrum. People who are at the highest end of the spectrum are those that are classified as NPD, but others still with narcissistic traits may fall on the lower end of that narcissistic spectrum. I think we all can at times have tendencies that are narcissistic, right?
Yeah, we're human.
We have those moments. We're more talking about the people that fall on the higher end of that spectrum who are clinically NPD, a little bit below. Like, we're not talking about the people that have like these sporadic moments. And I think when you are considering relationships in your life and kind of putting them up against this framework today, you need to really we need to ask ourselves, okay, is that a like few and far between situation, or is this actually a pattern of someone's behavior? You know what I mean?
Yeah, like an ongoing.
Right.
This is something that you see displayed frequently and over years and over time. Yeah. I'm looking, we're both looking at a couple of different sources as we go through this because we want to be sensitive to the topic, and neither one of us are trained health professionals. We're both very aware of that. But I'm looking at Duke Health's website, and they say symptoms of narcissistic personality disorder include the acronym Special Me. There are 9 signs. The first S, sense of self-importance, which of course, as humans, at some point we all have a sense of self-importance, right? But that's one of them. The P is preoccupation with power, beauty, or success. Again, we could have some level of that as a human, right? 3 is entitlement. The C can only be around people who are important or special. I, interpersonally exploitive for their own gain. A, arrogant. L, lack empathy. To me, that's a real big one.
Yeah.
M, must be admired. And E, envious of others or believe that others are envious of them. So again, like all of those could be one-offs with most humans, right? Like at any given point, we could all have a little bit of that. But what we're talking about is someone who really falls under all of those headings or the majority of them on an ongoing period.
Like all the time.
Yeah.
And there are 2 types of narcissism, and both have common traits, and but they come from different childhood experiences.
Interesting.
So the 2 types also dictate the different ways people will behave in relationships. So you have the grandiose narcissism, which is what I feel like a lot of us think about when we think of narcissism. You know, they're aggressive, dominant, they exaggerate their importance, they're very self-confident, but they aren't sensitive. There's that lack of empathy. Well, this says that people with this behavior were most likely treated as if they were superior or above others during childhood, and these expectations can follow them as they become adults. They tend to brag and be elitist. Then you have vulnerable narcissism. This behavior is usually the result of childhood neglect or abuse. People with this behavior are much more sensitive. Narcissistic behavior helps to protect them against feeling inadequate. Even though they go between feeling inferior and superior to others, they feel offended or anxious when others don't treat them as if they are special.
The victim.
Yeah.
I've encountered both sides to that coin in different people throughout my life, and they are equally frustrating to deal with because you've got the one side that is so dominant, domineering, arrogant, grandiose, like in your face, I'm the best at blah, blah. That's frustrating in its own bombastic way. But then when you also have someone who is, you know, nobody ever loves me. I just need attention. And, you know, she bullied me or whatever. And it can turn into the flip side where they're actually the bully by playing the victim. It's so bizarre.
Yeah.
It's a really weird thing to watch.
Yeah.
And you get drawn into it because, especially if you're a compassionate person like you and I are, you can get drawn into that and not have an understanding of the whole situation.
Yes.
And then be like, wait a minute.
And then get
What did
down
I-
the road
Yeah.
and figure out, oh, crap, I've been bamboozled. Cannot tell you how many times in my life something like that has happened because it pulls on my heartstrings or I want to be a good Christian or whatever. And then I find myself going, oh, crap, you know?
Yeah, same. And find myself, you know, trying to offer empathy and compassion to someone that I feel like has told me that they are suffering, not knowing the other side of the story. And then later just feeling really confused about how to feel about the situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think what's really hard for me to process with those relationships in life that you realize that somebody is narcissistic is that it's this tension between they don't wake up in the morning and think, today I'm going to be a narcissist.
No.
Like these are not conscious things. And so that is where somebody like me can give the benefit of the doubt and give leeway time after time after time.
I so relate to that.
But at a certain point, you know, like
It becomes toxic for you.
it becomes very
Or me, or
toxic.
whoever.
Exactly. And you know, my father-in-law used to say, like, somebody cannot mean to run you over with the car, but the result is still the same.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so,
I think that's called manslaughter.
oh, which is still punishable by law, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So,
It is. Just an interesting, just hit me.
yeah. I
Pun
mean,
intended.
well, and, you know, again, whether or not the intention is there,
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to figuring out what's healthy in your life, sometimes that intention is like a misnomer. It really doesn't matter.
Yeah, sometimes you just need to remove yourself from the situation, which is what I have found is the healthiest decision for me is just to cut off as much contact as possible. Or if I know I'm going to have contact, to be polite and then have a desire or a need to be somewhere else very quickly.
Yeah.
That's on Duke Health. There's some other questions. It says, are narcissists bad people? Narcissists are not bad people. It's their behavior
Right.
that's problematic. They've been conditioned to believe that they are special and deserve to be treated better than others and approach the world accordingly. And, you know, it's funny, when you first brought that up a second ago, you know what it made me think of? Is participation trophies. I think that's why this is such an issue now, is
Yeah.
because like so many
But I was here. I deserve the trophy. That kind of thing.
that kind of thing. It's a little bit of a narcissistic tendency, right? Like, is there, you know, the meritocracy piece was sort of missing for a while in childhood. And I could see how that sense of entitlement would pour over into other things if that's how somebody's brought up as a child. There I go again, like giving space and leeway, right? But I can see how it would happen.
That's the thing. And again, it's okay to call an ace and have compassion at the same time. You can do both. It is very uncomfortable. And again, very disorienting. But if you have a relationship in your life that leaves you often, especially when things escalate or you get into a disagreement, and it leaves you feeling as if you are absolutely insane, that you start questioning reality. And I'm not talking about having a challenging conversation with someone that makes you look inward and go, man, I need to rethink my
that's
perspective.
self-reflection.
That's self-reflection.
Yeah,
I'm talking about something that leaves you questioning your sanity and questioning your perception of reality.
Have you had that happen?
Yes.
I have too. And it was I was in my 20s and it was a close relationship. And I got to the point where when I would look at myself in the mirror, I saw something that didn't actually exist. I've talked about it before. I have a bit of body dysmorphia from time to time because I was heavier whenever I was younger. Well, this was a time in my life when I was eating well and I was working out probably 4 to 6 days a week consistently, enjoying it. But when I looked in the mirror, because of the relationship that I was in, I saw somebody that was fat and ugly. I'm like 5'2". I was probably about 123 pounds and 26, 25 years old. You know, I can look at myself in the mirror now and not think those things.
Yeah.
But for that period of time, because of the person that I was with and the behavior that I was experiencing in that relationship, despite the fact that I was probably at my like physical peak in a lot of ways, I was at my mental health lowest.
Yeah. And I think that might even be just suffering some emotional abuse.
I think so too. Yeah. I didn't really
which-
understand that at the time.
Which kind of goes hand in hand when you're in a really close relationship with a narcissist. That can happen. You know, for me, it was when I came to this person to like express, you know, like if Mandee says something to me and it kind of hurts my feelings, I can be like, hey, you know, the other day, I know you didn't mean to, but it just kind of hurt my feelings when you said XYZ. Well, Mandee is going to be like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. That's not what I intended at all. I'm so sorry, Ashley. Well, the reverse of that with a narcissist, was, well, that wasn't my reality.
Whoa. That's gaslighting.
Yeah. And it had me truly questioning my sanity. Like, I'm in a room with this personality that is quite big, a big presence. Mm-hmm. And I'm just trying to express as best I can how something they did made me feel. Mm-hmm. Because I thought that's what you can do with relationships. And their responses were, well, that wasn't my reality. And, you know.
So there was no compassion. There was no self-awareness or what is this word that I'm looking for? There's no apology.
The apology came in such an angled, kind of a weird way that it was like, it was all very, very confusing to me. Trying to first beat down my perception and kind of like point out how wrong that was, or how that was, you know, that's your perception of reality. It's not mine. Wow. But then, I mean, I'm strong enough that I kept trying to reiterate or trying to convey, when you said this, and I have a great memory of an elephant, so I can give you verbatim what was said. When you said that, it made me feel like this. It took like an hour.
Sure.
And to get, you know, I don't recall that. I don't recall saying that, but I mean, you know, if that's how you felt, I am sorry. It was like, I feel better.
Wow. I was having happy hour dinner and drinks with some friends the other day, and a friend was relaying a conversation that she had with someone that was in her industry. And she confronted him about something that was said or a situation. And he basically said, well, that's not my truth. And my truth is backed up of 2,000 years worth of Christian law or something along those lines. And it was such a...
That's gaslighting, though, too. I mean,
this person is in a position of authority within his industry to make that statement to my friend was just a bit over the top, you know? It really, I found it to be very disappointing that someone in his position would have that sort of defensive response of, well, that's not my truth, and my truth is the truth situation.
There's a term for that.
What is the term for that?
Spiritual bypassing. That's a thing. Tendency to use spiritual ideas and practices to sidestep or avoid facing unresolved emotional issues, psychological wounds, and unfinished developmental tasks. So a little table of like what emotional health looks like versus spiritual bypassing. Emotional health says, a part of me feels sad today. I'm curious what that's about. Spiritual bypassing is, you don't need to be sad. God has given you so much.
Oh, we were talking about this on another episode recently. I didn't realize there was a term for it.
Yeah. Emotional health is, I feel so angry at him. I don't want to act out of anger, but I do want to understand where it's coming from. Spiritual bypassing is, ask God to take your anger away.
Do you feel like you were raised with that? Or in a setting where that happened around you?
Oh, yeah.
Not maybe with your parents. I don't mean it that way, but like in a situation in church where you felt like you heard that a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that happens a lot in churches. And again, I think it's usually birthed out of the best intentions. They're coming from leaders wanting to build teenagers up or young kids up in like faith. Mm-hmm. But we've had a hard time. The church has had a hard time holding the tension of faith and real emotional health and mental health. Mm-hmm. And so the result has been producing this crop of people that don't know how they feel or why they feel it. And they certainly don't know how to navigate those feelings in a healthy way. Mm-hmm. They just present behaviors that they know they should present. But I can
except behind closed doors, they might not.
Yeah,
right?
And inwardly they're falling apart.
Yeah,
like I can do all the right things, but inwardly I might be crumbling.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think most people know that what that feels like. I think we've all had experiences where we've put on a mask or exhibited a front to get through a difficult situation. But if you're living like that on a regular basis is where it gets really challenging.
And, you know, like right now, like with our kids, I posted something reposted something the other day, and I thought, oh, there's going to be some people that don't like what I posted. It said, basically, the essence of it was, what if your kid's outburst is not them misbehaving or disrespecting you? It's them trying to tell you how they feel. And that to me is a big difference in how Bradley and I parent and how, you know, a lot of examples out there have been, because, you know, generations before us, it was you sit down, you shut up, you do your deal. No questions asked.
Seen and not heard.
Yeah, yeah. And again, this is across generations and, you know, all kinds of stuff. You know, Charlie, our youngest, is like feels really big emotions. And there are times when in the moment her outburst or her behavior comes out, and ultimately it's not nice. It can be disrespectful and all this stuff. Now, am I one of those parents who's like, now, honey, you know, gentle parenting to the point where I don't keep her accountable? No, that's not what I'm talking about. But I'm talking about, she just had this outburst. She's 4. She doesn't know how to regulate her emotions. I do, because I'm an adult. So it's my job to come in there, sit with her in it, and help her regulate her emotions, help her navigate it. If I just simply say, Charlotte, don't you ever talk to me like that again, and I spank her behind and that's the end of it. Well, I may end up having a daughter who on the outside behaves very well. But inside, she may feel like, I can't talk to my mom because blah, 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 blah.
And then that leads to later problems.
It does. So I would much rather dig in that moment, help sit with her in the moment and go, hey, like, are you feeling frustrated right now? I remember Noah when he was a baby, I frustrated. You know, did your feelings get hurt just then? You know, and then help her calm, help her regulate. And with Charlie, it'll be like, baby, take a breath. I can't stop crying. Okay, baby, I'm here with you. Let's just breathe for a second. And then we walk through it. And I love her in that moment, and I guide her through how to recognize what she's feeling, how to feel it, how to walk that out. I'm not talking about behavior with her in that moment. That's not the frickin' time. It's just not the time.
Yeah.
But I really believe if I will help my daughter know how to feel her feelings and navigate those moments and regulate, the behavior's going to follow.
It should become fewer and far between, because she'll start to understand what she's feeling, and the outburst should be limited.
I was talking with a friend of mine last night, and she said, you know, for the longest time with my daughter, we dealt with the eye rolls and the attitude and the And she said, you know, we've worked on this for a really long time. And she said, last night I said, hey, are you going to get the dishes done? And she went, I'm coming. I'll be right there. So the mom like, okay, and goes in the other room. And then the daughter comes in and goes, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for that to come out like that. And we both did like a little celebration. I was like, it's like all the seeds you planted actually like sprung to life, you know, like she's seeing results. But if we're only, and maybe we're getting off a little bit on a rabbit trail here, but, you know, to only be concerned with a behavior and not concerned with the heart behind it is an issue.
Well, and I think that's where, you know, you're talking about the narcissistic spectrum, right? I think that's kind of where that sort of evolves and changes within people, is because you do have some people that seek therapy for whatever reason, and then they start to uncover these tendencies and start to develop a self-awareness, which they've been lacking. And then it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
I've got a friend that's sort of on a self-awareness journey right now, and she's been having some uncomfortable conversations. She's got a life coach. I'm so proud of her. This is a big step for her. And we had a very frank conversation about why sometimes I don't talk to her
Yeah.
And I was like, sometimes, friend, you are difficult to deal with. And she was like, I need to hear this.
Man.
And I was like,
self-awareness.
yeah. And I was like, I'm saying this from a place of love. She said, I hear that.
Yeah.
And I said, you come across as a bully. And I don't think you intend to.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you do.
Yeah.
And so I just pull back and remove myself from that situation because I don't need that in my life right now.
Yep.
It's not that I don't care about you.
Yeah.
Because I do.
I actually do, or else I wouldn't be having this conversation.
Right. And I feel really uncomfortable having this conversation with you.
I'm proud of the both of you.
It was a tough one.
Both of you were brave in that one. For
We were.
you to be able, but see, here's the thing too. A narcissist in that moment, if you had been the narcissist, all you would have been able to do was critique and criticize and show the negative. It would not have been felt that you were coming from a place of love. Even if you said, it comes from a place of love.
Yeah.
People can feel that and they know the difference.
Yeah, they do.
On the other side, if she were an absolute narcissist, she would have zero capacity to say, I need to hear this. Okay, tell me more.
I'm always encouraged whenever I find somebody that has those tendencies when they do start seeking some therapy. I think it's unlikely that a therapist is going to say, you're a narcissist. I think that's highly unlikely. I don't think anybody's going to label them that way unless it's really, 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 really strong.
You might say you've got some narcissistic tendencies, or
Yes.
they may come out and said it. I told my therapist, I said, listen, I do not want a pat on the hand. If I am the narcissist, tell me. And she looked at me and she's like, well, I mean, you asked that, so that probably means that you're not. I said, well, listen, I don't care.
Yeah.
I if I get to talking and that's what shows up, I want to know. Because
Yes.
and this is the thing too, like when you have anybody that you cannot be honest with them about how you feel when they say or do something, something is off there. You know what I mean?
There's a relationship dynamic that's not right.
Well, and I mean, like I have had relationships where I can't say, hey, that hurt my feelings, because they will take it as an indictment on their character.
Ooh, yeah. And
It's
that's
like,
not the intent.
Well, and that binds my hands. Like, well, then I can't live in an honest relationship with you if I can't tell you when you accidentally hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
What am I supposed to do? You
Yeah,
know,
just grin and bear it and move on.
yeah, and that's
Not address it.
That's not okay. That's not healthy. And again, that's that level of I can show that behavior, but that's not reality. Like that's not what's, you know, on the surface we may like everything might look hunky-dory, but underneath here I'm crumbling because you keep stomping all over my heart and I can't tell you about it because it's an indictment on your character. No. Like
Yeah.
everybody hurts somebody's feelings at some point in life, maybe
Yes.
on the daily. It doesn't mean that
Yes.
you're a bad person.
No.
It just means, hey, your words, you got careless right there and that hurt my feelings. I love you enough to let you know that when you talk like that or when you say something like that, how it affects me. And if you find yourself in a relationship where you can't be honest like that, it's at the very least a sign of unhealth, you know, and something being really off. And at worst, you know, you could be in a relationship with just a full-blown narcissist, and it's horrible.
You know, it's interesting. This topic has come up, I feel like, sort of sprinkled through various conversations that you and I've had over the last year of the podcast. And I got an email from a newsletter that I recently signed up for that was like, I guess, highlighting a book that's new from Dr. Ramani. It's called It's Not You, Identifying and Healing from Narcissistic People. And when I saw it, I thought, oh, this topic keeps coming up with Ashley and I. Like, maybe we should look at this book. So I sent it to Ashley. I was like, maybe we should talk about this. That's why we're talking about it today. We've both downloaded the book on Audible. So we'd like to revisit this topic. And I found it interesting. So as I started digging into, okay, what what does this topic look like? How are we going to have this conversation? What's it going to be shaped like? Because it's not going to be Ashley and I mudslinging people that we've come across that have treated us wrong. That's not what this is.
There's no need in that.
No, both of us are coming from a place of healing from toxic relationships, and we want to grow and we want to prevent being in that situation again.
Yeah.
So I Googled the title of this book, and, you know, Google is interesting because it tells you what people also ask.
Yeah.
These are some of the questions that came up. The first one, what does God say about dealing with a narcissist? The second, what words can destroy a narcissist? The third, how do you shut down a narcissist? And then how do you repel a narcissist? And I think it's so interesting there because that is a variety of responses to somebody being in relationship with a narcissist. Clearly it's challenging, right? If you're trying to destroy, shut down, or repel. But then also you have people who are approaching it probably kind of like you and I, like, okay, well, what does God say about this? How do I treat this with compassion? How do I be loving in this moment of fear and pain and frustration? And it's common.
Yeah, and it comes, you know, these characters will pop up in all spheres of our life. You know, could be family, could be friends, could be an employer, an employee, a pastor, name it. And again, I think what's intriguing to me about the title of that book is the first part is identifying.
Yeah.
Because I think that's so crucial. If we just have like that filter to just be able to pick up, again, this is not about being able to go and like throw a scarlet, letter on somebody and say,
you're not labeling people with narcissistic personality disorder.
That's not our job.
No,
that's
no,
not
no.
our job.
No.
But to pick up on, okay, I see a little bit of that poking out, or you know what, actually, that's kind of a normal pattern of behavior for that person. That may need to be a relationship that I think twice about. But I think, I just know for me how long I went with some relationships not recognizing the signs. And I thought it was me. I thought it was my fault.
Yeah.
So identifying that and then healing. I mean, because being in a relationship with someone like that, again, whether that's the intention that they wake up in the morning with or not, it will have an effect on you. It will cause you to, it can cause you to lose some self-esteem, to question yourself, to question your judgment, to question your reality.
Your identity, your character.
Yeah, all of that. And again, this is not, the normal when a friend, like the conversation you had with your friend, and your friend is like, I need to hear this.
Yeah.
You didn't make her question her entire world, her sanity, her reality. You're just bringing to light this one little sliver.
I brought forth a challenging behavior.
Yes. And she was able to go, and take it in conjunction with, it's one piece of the pie. It's not the whole thing. I'm strictly talking about these relationships that when you have interactions with them or things you disagree, or even when you don't disagree, but when you walk away from interactions, you question your sanity and your reality. Healing from that, especially if you've been in it for a long time, is so crucial.
And I think, narcissism and gaslighting go hand in hand. And I Googled it because I wanted to see, is there a specific definition? And Merriam-Webster cites deception of one's memory, perception of reality, or mental stability, which is what you're talking about. And oftentimes that's what happens is they gaslight.
Yeah.
And it's
the side comments too, because back to that same conversation I was talking about, without ever coming out and saying that I was crazy, the comments were, when you said that, I mean, I just thought, what is she, like, so arrogant or so crazy that she would say this to me? They didn't come out and say,
no,
you're crazy, but by just saying that, it implies.
Yeah.
And then that makes me go, holy crap.
Yeah. So some signs are that they insist you said or did things that you didn't do.
Yes.
Deny or scoff at your recollection of events.
Yes.
Which is what you were talking about. Call you too sensitive or
Yep.
crazy
Yep.
when you express your needs or concerns, or express doubts to others about your feelings, behavior, and state of mind, twisting or retelling events to shift blame to you. Those are signs, and sometimes they're hard to spot because some people are really good at manipulating their words and being very charismatic
Yes. Yep.
to really redirect your behavior, and you don't even realize that it's happening.
See,
Like, wait a minute, did I say that?
Yeah.
What was I there?
yeah, was I
Did
crazy?
did
Did
that
I?
actually happen?
Oh, yeah.
I asked you today, did I imagine sending you this email or did it actually happen? That also happens when you hit 40. But Ashley said, no, I got it. I'll send it to you. You know,
Yeah.
that's
And
two different things.
You know, hopefully this is helpful, because for anybody, I'm very strong and I'm very opinionated, and I'm also very tenderhearted and very much wants to do the right thing by people no matter what. And so when brought with that kind of a situation where someone is doing all the things that you just mentioned, my first go-to is to go inward and go, okay, did I do any of that? Because if I did, I want to check myself and I want to change my behavior. And that's fine. But when it goes from there to spiraling down and feeling like you cannot get a finger on what's actually reality, there's a very good chance that it's actually not you, that it is the person that is coming at you, you know? And I just feel for anybody that's in that kind of a relationship, because I just know how hard that is. And it's very hard being in it. And then it's hard when you can recognize it, because then you have to do the brave thing and you got to figure out what to do now.
Yeah.
You know?
And that may look different in each relationship. You know, like you're saying, it can be anything from a coworker to a family member to somebody that's an acquaintance. I mean, that can look very different on a lot of different levels, right? The people that I encountered, one was very close to me, another was a coworker, and I ended up leaving that job, not because of that person, but it did give me some distance, which was great. And then another was more of a tendency, not really somebody that was full blown, but I just have learned that when I see those tendencies, when I did go to therapy a few years ago and was kind of working through some of this, I realized I hadn't healed from it. My therapist was like, you need to identify how you're going to deal with these people when you see them again. And so for me, what that looked like in a healthy way for me was to be polite and remove myself from a situation. And not to be rude, not to point fingers or blame or spout hate or whatever, regardless of how angry or frustrated or hurt I might still feel, but to just remove myself from the situation and go find somewhere else to be. And then I journaled through some of it. I clearly was in therapy, so I was talking through some of it and processing my own, you know, my own feelings of guilt and shame for having existed in that relationship for as long as I did, because I don't think of myself as a weak person.
Yeah, same.
Or as a victim very often. That's just not, it's never really been my tendency.
Right.
But I was the victim in that situation. And in order for me to switch back to the role of the victor and get out of it, I had to first recognize it.
And we mentioned this before we turned the microphones on. It's very easy to get isolated when you're in those relationships. And that can mean isolation unto yourself. Sometimes isolation looks like being in a room full.
Yeah, like in a bubble.
Yeah, but you are, that whole same mindset is
Same
there.
influence.
And it can isolate you into that echo chamber that makes it very hard to recognize what's reality and what's not, what's normal and what's not, what's healthy and what's not. You know, when you do start to recognize these signs, depending too on the nature of the relationship, the dynamic, the role that person has, you will likely be faced with some really hard choices. But if anything, I think the big thing is get yourself into the presence of people that you can trust so that they can kind of calibrate you to reality. Mm-hmm. They can reorient you to, no, baby, that's not normal.
Find a healthy perspective.
Find a healthy perspective.
Or a few of them.
And if you don't have one in your life, go pay for one.
Yes.
And a therapist. Yes. And then it's going to be a matter no matter what, whether you have to leave a situation or you just have to figure out how to stay in a healthy way. Like if it's at a job or whatever, it's going to be boundaries. Mm-hmm. You know, I know now with that person, like there are certain things we are not, if it comes up, I will very politely, very kindly say, that's not an area that I'm willing to talk with you about.
Yeah. And that's simple and that's okay. Mm-hmm. That's okay. So, I mean, Ashley and I have shared some of our personal experiences sort of vaguely, just to be sensitive of others and to ourselves. We know this is a topic that a lot of people deal with, and so we want to offer space to that. We have had one person come on already that's talked about being in an abusive sort of narcissistic relationship and share her story. But one of the things that I feel like is important for us to celebrate in women is strength and overcoming and courage and doing the brave thing, whether that is having healthy boundaries and coexisting or leaving or whatever that looks like. And so if you've got a story that you feel like would be beneficial for someone to hear, to offer courage and insight, then we want to hear it.
We would love to hear it. And if you're, if you want to submit that anonymously and, we don't need names, again, like this is never going to be about turning a microphone on and dragging a name under the mud. Mm-hmm. I do think though that when life has handed you some things and we've both Mandee and I have navigated some situations and they've been really hard and produced pain, but we've also kind of started like getting out of those situations. Like if we can help other people, that's why we turn these microphones on. Mm-hmm. And we want to celebrate others that are doing kind of the same thing or needing to do the same thing. Because again, I think that more of us have dealt with this than we know. And when we sit down and we talk about it and we hear stories, it helps validate our experiences in some ways and helps us realize we're not alone and yet again, not crazy.
Right. Right. And if you feel like your story is one that you would want to tell and be a guest, then let us know that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
We definitely want to offer that spotlight to people who are overcomers and courageous.
Yep.
The Celebrating Women podcast wants to hear from you. Email us a voice message to celebratingwomenpodcast@gmail.com. We would love to hear your story or the story of an incredible woman you know. Become part of the conversation on social media. Facebook.com/celebratingwomenpodcast. On Instagram, search Celebrating Women Podcast. The Celebrating Women podcast has been presented by Hand and Stone Massage and Facial Spa in Tyler, Texas. Book your appointment today. Stop by the spa in Cumberland Shopping Center or online at handandstonetyler.com. The Celebrating Women podcast is created and hosted by Mandee Montana and Ashley Fisher. Support the show for as little as $3 per month at celebratingwomenpodcast.buzzsprout.com or visit our show notes. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to subscribe to the Celebrating Women podcast.